speaking on behalf of Jess Waghorn from Churchdown School Academy, whose question is, why does the universe have to have a creator, but God doesn't?
So that's quite a good question. Why does the universe need a creator, but God doesn't?
Who wants to start on this?
Well, one could start, in the first place, one could say that, does the universe need a creator? Was it Laplanche or somebody like that who said we no longer require that hypothesis in response to Napoleon? So, I mean, I would say that the idea that the universe requires a creator probably has its origin in Aristotelian physics, that it was a scientific hypothesis. So Aristotle had a certain view about nature that required a first cause. That metaphysical scientific theory, which is no longer true, I don't think there's any scientist who believes that now, then became retranslated through medieval theology, linked to an argument for the existence of God. So two kind of discourses got attached together.
So kind of Aristotle's crossover between the philosophical and the scientific gets fed through Aquinas and people, and ends up as a theological argument.
Yeah. Well, now that scientific side of it is now gone, so there's no scientist who thinks that you require the postulate of the existence of God to explain the universe. Then really I think that the necessity for religious commitment to a first cause seems unconvincing to me. To read it as a kind of proto-scientific hypothesis.
Which is often how it's taught, the idea that this, as if it's kind of self-evident, due to our normal knowledge of cause and effect, to require a first cause.
So that's the big advantage. Now there are specific, interesting historical arguments, which Roy might know in a lot more detail than me, why, if you were to accept that God created the universe, why it makes no sense that God himself was something that was created.
Because he's God.
Yeah, that's the easy answer.
Why do we think of that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have, it's a standard sort of philosophical response, of course, but if God was created by something else, then that would be God. So there has to be a necessary first thing. And the universe is contingent, therefore, for the contingency to come into existence, you need some kind of necessary being.
So that's the difference between necessary and contingent.
Yes, yeah.
So in a certain sense, it would contradict the very definition of God to claim that such a being had a cause.
And that's a very big part of a certain kind of Christian philosophy of religion, for example, to say that one of the key features of divinity is necessity. God doesn't happen to exist, God must exist. Yeah. And you find that in ontological argument as well.
That's right.
But it's a key aspect is that this is what God is, the thing which is.
Yes, but I mean, Will's right about linking it with Aristotle, because it's a very abstract idea, the idea of the absolute. I mean, it's more difficult to go from there to argue for God having these various attributes that you have.
Yes, and have a necessary being have these kind of subjective, temporary, some feelings and not other feelings.
Yes,
To me, that's the irony of it, that sometimes you listen to certain religious people who will still put forward this argument, and you think, it's very strange that you're still talking in a kind of Aristotelian metaphysics, even though you probably have no awareness that that's the origin of this argument, which of course is completely outside the kind of Judaic Christian tradition. And also, I think, historically speaking, I think it's only with the rise of sciences in the 17th century that people started thinking they required some kind of logical or empirical justification for their beliefs. I think, as Roy said somewhere else, that religion was just a part of people's lives. They didn't feel it required an argument to believe. And even when we see the proofs, like Aquinas' proofs or Aslan's proofs, look at them within the context. It's not that they need proofs to have faith. They already have faith. They don't require logical or scientific.
They were never meant to function as proof to a non-believer. They're meant to function as a meditation that deepens your faith or reflects on the nature of divinity. They were for someone who already had belief to explore what it meant, not for someone to use it as a hammer to hit non-believers with, logically.
And as Aslan wrote about the proof, the ontological argument in terms of a prayer, as a celebration.
Yeah, necessity, and rather than saying.
Well, if me personally, if you want to understand why the universe exists, then science will tell you, not religion. Eventually.
Okay, but before we get into a complete explanation of how all physics works, the short Dr. Welsh could give us, I think we'll stop.